I will say that there is the concern with the school's budget as proposed, while it is level funded, as we're working on a unified school system here in the Highlands, that there is a salary increase proposed, and one of the challenges that we're having as we unify the school systems is the salary equalization piece, sort of across the board. So I'm not sure how schools is actually going to implement that, or what sort of leveling that they're looking at doing. Last year there was, even with the budget that they were given with the 10% cut, there was a step increase provided to teachers. So I do believe that that is something that you all should review and consider and discuss. It's not my place to.
Didn't the county school board, didn't they give the same raise?
There was money sent over from the state. Yes.
County gave 5%?
Gave 5%.
What'd the city give?
City hasn't given anything I know of.
This-
I have to take a look at it.
So it's not the city, there was additional funds that came from the state, so there's a one-time bump, and then if you bump it, then you're self-obligated to then continue to meet. My concern is that while the county did that, their pay scale still is on the lower end of where ours are at. And
Well-
just the alignment then of that when we move to a fully, because come July 1, school administration is unified.
This year, next year.
This year. Or no, it's next year, sorry. This year, we have the name and the fiscal agent kind of thing, where we have to have the bank account for the state to deposit the dollars. Again, my concern is just, are we potentially putting ourselves financially at a disadvantage with then the salary equalization piece, because we have limited dollars from the state. We did not get the total ask. And that's just a big picture thing to be thinking of.
Yeah, because once if you go with the state, basically it's a 50-50 proposition all
And
the
then
time.
next year it's 100%.
Right. Well, but I mean, if they give you enough, they say, we want you to get a 3% increase in salary, they give you a 1.5%, and then the locality has come up with the other 1.5%. That's just the way the state works. But as far as what the schools are talking about right now, at the beginning of this first 8 years, on the salary scale, and that was in Covington to come up to what the county was, which is a matter of hundreds of dollars per
I will say that
teacher.
that was not the way that their budget that was delivered to me and
But-
as well as council was worded.
But that's what I understood, that at one time they were going to be asking for, that was going to be the difference between the county and the city as far as Covington was concerned, outside of the administration. The administrators in the city make less than the county, and then on the first 8 years of it, in other words, the salary scale doesn't jump very much at all in Covington, whereas it jumps a little further for the first 8 years in the county.
Correct.
Now, the second thing is that the equalization of salaries with the merger is going to basically be for the county teaching staff, and I assume classified employees as well, because that has to come up to what the city is. But now, after the merger, this could be a different thing. I mean, when you're taking a look at budgets and things, even though supposedly it will save money, every year at budget time, there's going to be a little bit of controversy. I'll predict that.
Lord,
Because-
there is now.
I will say, and this is word for word from the budget received from the school system. The budget approved by the General Assembly provides the state share of a compensation supplement based on a 5% salary increase for standards of quality instructional and support positions effective July 1st, 2021. This amount is $241,806 for our division. The Virginia Department of Education's Budget Office interprets the General Assembly language to provide flexibility to implement local raises over both years of the biennium. The compensation supplement is counted as a personal services inflation rate when direct aid budget has been re-benchmarked for the 2022 to 2024 biennium, which means that it will be applied to the prevailing salary rate in order to calculate the funding salary rate. It carries forward to the next biennium and beyond. So that's out of their ask of they have a total budget of 12 million. And they asked us for the same level funding as last year, which was without the debt service. What was the total last year? Yes.
$2,994,872.
So you have $2.9 million asked. 240. Yeah. 241,000 of that is pre-programmed for 5% salary increase. To put it in perspective, we did our first 2.5% cost of living adjustment for city employees in quite a few years last year. Last year, there were step increases as well. So my concern is on the financial end of the sustainability of that, especially when you have a unified system. And then we'll have to also work to make up equalized salaries with folks that are under the current system in Allegheny with the state dollars, but those state dollars are only going to go so far.
But unless we're gonna take 240 out of it or some amount, we can't tell them what to do with it if we give level funding, so.
5% is 241.
Okay,
Now
so-
it'll be 241.
So, I mean, unless we're gonna take it away, there's not a whole lot we can do to tell them you can't do that.
You can legally earmark funding in programmatic buckets, right? So you can do it like how we have budgets in like functional areas. You can say X dollars for CIP and maintenance, X dollars for instruction, X dollars that are approved on your end for salaries and FICA and all of that. You can't go down to a fine, minute line item, but you can make a big bucket, if that makes sense. Like an umbrella, like the little arms of an umbrella. You do have the ability to do that. And again, I will say that I did have this discussion with the school superintendent. Mr. Bryant was on in that conference with me, and their finance head, Mr. Irving, where the concern was expressed that if there was a raise, just what that means as we move forward. I don't believe that standards of quality positions really account for it's not necessarily like your bus driver or your cafeteria worker that where you're looking at that minimum wage realignment that we're struggling with on our end, which is another factor to consider that we ultimately will be funding with this school system as well as with a unified system, and things go to $15 an hour.
Anything above standards of quality, which identifies a certain number of positions based on basically enrollment, will be 100% funded by the locality. Plain and simple. 100% by the locality.
Would you all like to table this? Or,
Hey, well, I mean, what's the option? Cut it?
and if you cut it, I mean,
That's what
to be quite frank, and this is a hard position because I empathize with our educational system. Being a I was a private preschool teacher. Taught pre-K, taught kindergarten. I understand what goes into teaching, lesson plans, all of that on a smaller scale. But what I will say is, it was a bit disheartening that last year when we proposed the 10% cut, that the information that we were provided is that there would be direct instructional impacts, that there would be positions that would not be able to be fulfilled, yet there was a step increase. And so this year, yet again, you're presented a level funded budget with a 5% increase programmed in. Just at what point is what going to the students and what's going invested into technology, innovation, STEM, the needed skills? Because it's the budget is very salary heavy, very salary and benefits heavy. It's something that I think is worth reviewing, given that, as I mentioned, there were, we did a 10% cut last year across the board, not knowing what COVID would do to our revenues, anything. And that was city agencies, that was outside agencies, everything. We preserved a few core things like the library, some League on Aging, or Older Americans, sorry, I always get that butchered, but there was still a salary increase. You all as a council have not been able to do that with budgets for city staff in quite some time. And they are in a different position because they do get money initially augmented from the state, as do the sheriff's office. So it's very different when you deal with some comp board positions, but then what happens when that money's not there? And I just view it as it's my responsibility to just have that candid discussion with you all, so that we're thinking also ahead in 2 years. Well, what happens when the money's not there, and we're fully footing the bill? Do I think that what's proposed is paying teachers something they're not worth? Absolutely not. But is it something that we can technically sustain or technically balance out in a unified system? More than likely, no. That's the reality.
The reality, unfortunately, right now for us is, and I don't begrudge any teacher wanting to make it. Lord knows they deserve it.
Yes.
If I was a teacher, I'd need bail money and not a raise. But, right now when we've got city staff that's seriously looking at going to McDonald's because they can make 13 out of the gate and $1,000 after 90 days, I appreciate the school board worrying about the school staff. That's their job, but I worry about our staff. And literally when we've got them saying, "Oh, I can go for $10 an hour at Arby's, and then my minimum wage is going to go up, and I don't have the stress of dealing with being a city employee of the city."
Well, and that is a very real thing, as we've discussed, the workload that we have because of our slim staffing. That I'm sure that at times there is an appeal, because then you're not, there's more of a work-life balance. And again, I will just point out that last year with the cut, there was a step increase. This year with a level funded budget, there's still a 5% increase. So they're finding it somehow. And my concern is just at what cost. So are you shortchanging your building maintenance? Are you shortchanging things to augment and offset or complement sort of instructional efforts? I mean, I do not believe that we are fully at one-to-one Chromebooks yet, and those types of things. I could be wrong in that statement, but at my last conversation in the middle of COVID, we still were not fully at that one-to-one ratio, and that's a vital piece of anyone's education, COVID or no COVID, having that technology at your fingertips. We are at a point where I will say, and it was in the paper, that we had an austere budget. While it is a very tight and conservative budget, it is a budget that puts the city first and the citizens first, and that we are trying to plan ahead with bridge maintenance funds or a parks and recreation fund, the public safety asset reserve fund, to help try to build funds to offset what may become major ticket items.
They
All the
don't
ma-
pay us for that I know of.
So one thing is, in the finance committee meetings, and it's something we're trying to work through in the funding formula, and we're trying to track on our end operationally, the cost of maintaining and the upkeep of things like Casey Field and the portion of the sports complex where the schools actually do some of their athletic practices, so that the school system gets billed back, right? So that then we track, do, and bill back. The other piece then too is, another good example is water. Schools don't have water meters. There's no way to even for
School
effective school buses.
School
And we
bus
fix
maintenance.
the school buses.
We don't buy the parts, but we provide
Free labor.
Free labor. So when we're looking at $2.99 million to the schools,
There's a lot of in-kind services.
you're not counting the in-kind services.
No, sir.
The free water, the free sewer, the free sports fields, the free bus maintenance. We're not counting any of that in that 2.99. So it sounds like we're getting a good deal here with 2.99. We're not.
No.
You know, you could probably take that on up another $500,000 with the in-kind services that we're providing to the schools. So at the same time, we've got police officers that aren't making as much as the people over in the other buildings are making. You know, we've got maintenance workers. David's sending people to Arby's to work because they make more money at Arby's than they can work for the city. We got,
Wait, you're sending them to Arby's?
yeah, he sent them over. McDonald's too, isn't it?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
$1,000
they
for 90
make
days at
more money
McDonald's,
there.
yeah.
So we're seeing the budget balance on the back of the city employees.
Yep.
Correct.
While we've
We're
got to look
funding
at
everyone
what's-
else's quality of life.
We've got to look at what's fair and equitable.
Well,